welcome back to Words and Pictures for a little bit more tag time. I'm using up rusty elements that I'm making over the course of this January. I'm not quite sure what order you're going to see these things in. These backgrounds, including this tag that I've fished out for today, are episode 5 of the Rusty Playtimes using distress inks and oxides, and I think there must be some mica spray in there. Look at the shimmer on that. So I'm going to have a little play with those today. I think what I'm going to do is run this one through this embossing folder and get myself some panels to put on here. I'm having a think about changing that. I love this Finders Keepers quote chip that came out in a previous episode and didn't get used. So I've been thinking about mudlarking the Victorian children, well, whole families actually, who used to make a living by hunting for scraps in the tidal mud along the banks of the Thames in Victorian London. Not an easy place to be. And he sort of felt like a pretty well-to-do mudlarker, to be honest, but I just wondered whether there's a thing about using maybe some of these tiny bottles we made the other day as something he's been mudlarking for, and then he'd get some money for taking the glass bottles places. In any case, what I want to do first of all is just have a little experiment with running this through the Big Shot to get myself some texture. So one of the recommendations using these deep 3D embossing folders from Tim Holtz and Sizzix is to spritz the paper with a light spray of water to get it to hold. I don't want to spray the front side because obviously that's where all my inking is. So I'm spraying the back just to get that extra bit of texture. Going to go and run this through the machine and I'll be back to alter it further. Right, so there it is embossed, and because it's quite busy, you don't really get to see that texture until you do something to bring it into relief. So one thing I want to have a go at is maybe doing a bit of dry brushing with this Pewter Treasure Gold, which is a gilding wax. So you could do this with any of the kinds of gilding waxes. You could do this with paint. If you've got metallic paint, you can obviously do that. And one of the keys to dry brushing is to have not very much product on your brush, and then always to go at an angle, preferably a 45-degree angle. It helps to have quite a stiff bristled brush. So you can see I'm putting a bit of product on and I'm sort of brushing it off, even with a bit of paper towel. And I don't know if you, I hope you saw how hitting this texture at an angle is allowing it to just deposit on the edges and the angles so that those gorgeous rivets and things come into focus. I'm quite keen to get quite a lot of silveriness on this because I think that's going to help with the metallic illusion. So at some point I might do some direct brushing. So rather than going at an angle, I'm going to go straight down onto there and maybe create, because this comes in patchwork. There's a beautiful patchwork of squares on here. So I'm thinking some of them I might try and make fully metallic, like so. And others I'm going to stick to the angled brushing to just try and pick up the edges of those panels. I hope that one came into focus for you as beautifully on camera as it did for me. So that sideways brushing is really the way to allow things into focus. It doesn't have to be metallic. You could do it with a dark colour to get shadow. You could do it with a white to get white highlights, something I very often do. It has that light catching quality. And then again, there are places where there are these delicious rivets, and I'm just giving them a bit more silvery focus by turning the bristles of the brush in a direction to hit them more full on than at an angle. Quite want a bit of silveriness there. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Maybe that should be my whole tag background. Maybe I don't want this tag at all. I really like that. It's giving me metallic vibes in a really good way. So yeah, Tim Holtz has foundry waxes. I think there's some heating involved in those as well. I've not played with the distressed foundry waxes. But there are all kinds of metallic products on the market. Finnabair with Prima does a lot. So again, shop your stash. There's no need to go out and find the same thing as me. These used to be stocked by Paper Artsy, but then all sorts of new rules came in about shipping metallics. And there is sort of a lovely alcohol smell when you're using this treasure wax. So it's definitely got ingredients that are not so easy to ship across the place any longer. I think that's beautiful. Really enjoying that quite a lot. And then the other thing with the treasure wax is, as well as applying it, it's then quite good if you give it a little bit of time to sort of rest into whatever you've used it on, and then give it a little buff with just some kitchen roll, and it just sort of wakes up the shimmer of it. That's a really cool panel. I wonder if I just want to... I was thinking of cutting sort of individual panels out of this to add, you know, like a square of it. But I'm just wondering whether I just want to stick with having that as my background. I'm going to stick that down onto some cardboard because it's just really cool. So this might end up not being tag time at all. It might be panel time. I suppose that's one thing to bear in mind about what I've been up to here this January, is that all these backgrounds we've been making are not the finished product. They are a starting point for another journey. So you could take any of these tags and die cut from them. You could, as I've done here, run them through an embossing folder, add more layers, add more detail, add more possibilities. I almost don't want to proceed with that at the moment, because I feel like I just want to enjoy it for a while. It could be a book cover. I mean, it's just really cool. I'm going to have a fiddle as I'm speaking to you, just to see what else might occur with these elements that are already around. See, that's quite fun. That's one of Seth's die cuts that we did in episode maybe 2. Episode 2. I quite like the geometrical strength of that. Quite enjoying. I have, as well as the rusty bits in here, I've also still got some sort of leafiness, winter pine branches and that kind of thing. I'm wondering if that's a good contrast with the metal. That's got an interesting thing about it. These were my original thought, with these bottles, these finder keeper bottles. Where's my finders keepers? I don't want to cross out the dog's head. That's his little shelf where he keeps his bottles he's found. Maybe a little one like that. Quite enjoying just the sort of randomness of this, letting things appear on the background. Do I want a third bottle? 1, 2, 3. Golden rule of threes. Which one? Maybe the bluish one. That's quite fun. What else did I have hanging around? This wonderful spine, a little sort of fishy spine, which also has an element of, I don't know, the mudlarking, the fish skeletons on the banks of the Thames. Wondering about that instead of the leaves. Maybe that's tidier or more in keeping with the grungy metallic background. Sort of missing that leaf now it's not there. Leaf, pine branch. Not so keen on that one. The colour's just a bit wrong. Going to try and be careful with these so that they don't lose their lids, lose their jar tops. I think I might be quite enjoying that. Let's have the spine going over the top of there. Just him tucked in. Let's have our shelf back. So that, as well as being words, is forming the shelf to keep our little findings on. And I love how clear those are against the background. They'd have been a bit lost against the green of there. Although, I mean, I'm still enjoying that shimmer. Let's pop that there temporarily. wondering about these numbers. Again, they're going to get lost against there where they're actually really good against that. So we'll maybe save that for another day. That's starting to... I'm going to have another little look at this. I'm going to see if I've got another brighter green bit of greenery. Green bit of greenery. Bit of evergreen stuff in here. Because I think it was the dull green of that was making me less happy. I quite like the vivid greens against that background. That's quite interesting. I don't know what it's got to do with the riverbank. Ooh, I tell you what has got to do with the riverbank. I could dig out my collected mussel shells and just make this a real finders keepers tag. What else has he found on his wanderings with his man's best friend? I'm going to find a mussel shell just to see how I feel about it. So these were collected on Musselburgh Beach in Scotland. Something quite interesting about that. Just really unusual because they're a gift from nature. Let's see about that one. I don't want to cover up too much of the other stuff. Maybe what I want is a bit of ephemera and some labels to just go in here. I'm not sure that's the thing on this one. So let's pop those aside. And instead I'm going to dig out some ephemera labels and have a little play with those. This I'm enjoying with the leafiness. There's something about the pine branches and that rusty metal background that is quite satisfying. Up a little bit, he's dropped a little bit too far. That's it, because I need some of that visible down below. Very cool. Okay, next. I've zoomed in a little bit. I've cast aside for a moment the greenery. I've always loved these Tim Holtz gauge dials, and I'm just wondering if it isn't about something a little more industrial. There's also these aren't Tim Holtz ones, but they're, you know, great metal pieces, that there's maybe something to build up industrially. Not that. I do like that. I need something for him to stand on eventually. Maybe it's pulled out these metal pieces. Compendium of Curiosities is drawing my attention at the moment. Something that might go along the bottom here and he can kind of stand on it. And we have got Curiosities. What I could do is, with my Treasure Gold again, I can highlight these just with kind of the flat of my finger. Again, similar to the dry brushing really, just hitting the raised part of that with a touch of this metallic to bring those words into focus. So I haven't quite got to a compendium. That's quite nice, and then that's tying it into the background. That's quite fun. I might move him up again a little bit so that he is standing on top of it rather than with his feet behind it. Although the dog, annoyingly, needs also to stand on it, so his feet have to sort of come over the top of it a little bit. That's quite good. I want to keep that line of rivets right there, so positioning will be very precise there. Still enjoying that, still enjoying that. Do we want to keep finders keepers, or do we just, given we've got these words now, do we let that be the shelf for those? No, I like the finders keepers as well, because that is what it's about. It's about collecting and gathering. Little spine going up the side, a little bit of that going in there. La la la. It wants something labelly down in this bottom corner as well. Don't think it wants to be another gauge dial. Let's see what else we've got in this packet. What are you? I don't want that big red number. Specimen label. There's a price here. £2.49 doesn't seem like enough money. to make it worth doing all that gathering. Let's have a look what we've got in here. Again, this is a combination between what it says but also what it looks like. I want something light coloured, so it's going to draw the eye. Again, I don't really want that red bit, red writing, so I've used all the ones that don't have red writing. Something like that just tucks in under here for a little bit of detail. That's starting to work for me. And yeah, there are metal frames for these gauge dials if you want to use them. There's also a die set that you can cut to create frames around them, but I actually just like them as they are. I think I might be there. I think that might be sort of where I want to be with this little creation. Do you want maybe another little label tucked in somewhere? It'd be quite fun to have it going through the stripes of this, visible behind. So I'm going to do some gluing down, and yeah, see, look how much fun that is. Yeah, I'm going to do some gluing down and I'll be back with the usual close-up. Thank you as always for your company on this creative journey. Just trying these out again. There is something about the organic and the industrial. Given my obsession with the botanical, as you know, because it's been such a major focus for me with the stamps and everything in recent years, my love of the grungy industrial has had to take a bit of a back seat. But actually maybe there's something in combining the two that is really where the sweet point is. It has happened multiple times over the... I like that. Yeah, they're going to be involved. I'm going to glue things down. As I was saying, thank you for your company. I hope you've enjoyed seeing that little detour from tag time. Not tag time, but panel time. Lovely silvery fingers, always the sign of a good time. If you've enjoyed that, do give me a thumbs up, leave comments or questions down below. And yeah, I'll list as many helpful ingredients as I can in the description below the video, along with a link to the Rusty Patina playtime videos from this January, although I'm guessing we're going to be into February by the time you see this. Thanks so much for your company, and happy crafting all.